Hey YouTube, what is going on? It is Jackster back here with another video. And in today's video, we're going to be going over how to win your first grand challenge, some tips and tricks that will help you get better and get ready for that big step. It costs a lot of gems, about $1 worth of gems to enter one. So I want to make sure that you guys are as prepared as you can possibly be with the best tips that I know from experience when I was starting them out to help you guys so that you aren't wasting your gems and getting like a few wins because you're not sure how to play these. So I'll go ahead and I'm going to be going over when you want to start trying GCs, how you want to improve yourself before trying GCs, and which decks you're going to be wanting to use to complete that first grand challenge. So there'll be a lot of there'll probably be a little bit of repeat information from other videos, but I have a few new ideas that I haven't really seen thrown around that I want to share. So hopefully you guys enjoy this new video. Also, I did my hour-long pushing video with Pekka yesterday, and then I feel really bad, but I hopped off camera. I played one ladder game. It was against my friend, so we drew, and then I won 11 games in a row to get up to the top 250. When in the Pekka video, I like floundered. I only gained like about 150 trophies. So for the gameplay, since I don't really want to be using too much of my gems right now, I'm gonna do those for like a big GC grinding, oops, don't want to open it. A big GC grinding series on the channel or something, or global tournament awards, probably global tournament awards, but sorry there's no GC gameplay. I'm just gonna go over some of the replays. You can see we beat Lava Hound Barbhut, Graveyard, we beat Golem with Mini P.E.K.K.A, Kanagaar, and E-Drag. We beat Lumberloon Free. So good replays is that I'm gonna share with you guys. I'm not going to really be commentating them. I'm going to be going over the info for the GC winning process, but hopefully you guys will enjoy that gameplay as well in the background. So let me know if you guys kind of like this format of the video, or I just have replays or something running in the background while I talk about a different subject. And if you guys want to see classic challenges, because I know a lot of people want classic challenge guides as well. A lot of people ask me in the comments, could you play a classic challenge? So if you guys want to see that, make sure to comment down below. We want to see you play some classic challenges and go over how to win one of those. But without any further ado, let's get right into some of those tips. Alright, so the first section of this video is going to cover how high you want to be on ladder or what kind of accomplishments you want to have before you start playing grand challenges so that you're not wasting your gems. You're making sure you're at least getting 7, 8 wins, which is value for your gems, or almost ready to go in for the grand challenge. So if you have never won a classic challenge before, or you've won less than 10, that area is about the same. If you can't win a classic challenge consistently, pretty much with any time you try with whatever your deck choice is, you don't really want to be attempting a grand challenge. And this is just because classic challenges at 12 wins have about the equivalent skill level of a 6 wins into a GC or something like that. I can't remember exactly what it was from my experience, but I think it was about there. So if you don't have if you can't consistently win a classic challenge, and your personal best is below 6,300, I would not recommend starting with grand challenges at all. This is just like so that you can save your gems as much as possible. You don't want to be playing grand challenges unless you are ready to go with classic challenges, consistent winnings on those, or other things such as a high ladder personal best. So under 6,600 or under 6,300, I think you don't want to be playing grand challenges at all. It's probably not going to end up getting it's probably not going to be end up being good value for your gems, excuse me. So how you would want to improve this is again by going after classic challenges. 10 gems is a lot easier to come by for most people than 100 for that grand challenge. So you're going to want to do classic challenges and you're going to want to play ladder. If you have a maxed out deck, ladder is a better option in my opinion because you can get practice against a lot of better players as you push up higher. So in a classic challenge, until you get to like 8, 9, 10, 11 wins, you're not really going to be facing the players that are going to help you improve. If you're at this trophy range, you're going to be facing more of those really, really weird off-meta decks, players with like 5,000 personal best. So yeah, I would just say you should try and do classic challenges if you can't do ladder, but if you can do ladder, I'd say ladder is a much better way to improve yourself. And then, so now we have 6,600 to 7K as a personal best. Here, if you have this personal best, you can probably win games on ladder, or not games on ladder, you can probably win classic challenges really consistently. If you've played classic challenges, you probably have more than 10 at this point. So this is about the point where if you can spare a few gems, a spare, like if you have like 7 or 800 gems like I do, this is where I would say you want to go in for some grand challenges. You could practice, get ready for them, and really go and learn how a grand challenge feels, because it does cost a lot of gems to enter one. So you'd want to have at least a little bit of experience if possible. Um, Ladder is going to be a really good place to practice because most players at 6,600 to 7K have won a grand challenge before. And yeah, you will be able to get good practice against those kinds of players with your decks. And then if you have a 7,000 plus PB to like 7,300, you should really not be doing classic challenges at all anymore. You really are going to be wanting to go for those grand challenges. And you should be able to win a grand challenge without too much problems. Depends on how your matchups are. But yeah, you should be able to go for grand challenges at that point. So now we'll get into more of the part of like how you want to be attempting each grand challenge you play. So as I said, about a classic challenge is about the skill level of a 6 wins in a grand challenge. So for that 6 wins, you're likely going to be seeing really weird off meta decks, decks that don't make a whole lot of sense and could easily catch you off guard. So if you don't want your grand challenge run to be ended early by those weird decks, you want to be running a really solid control deck. And so control decks are usually found with three like cards or card concepts. So you're going to have a lot of splashers, which is like Ice Wizard, especially the Ice Wizard since it has that slowdown effect to give you more reaction time and keep everything from attacking as much. Especially the Ice Wizard is really good in control decks. So the Ice Wizard or Baby Dragon, those are all usually found. Then you have map control cards, such as Fisherman or Tornado. These will allow you to control how your opponent is playing their cards in your favor, so that if they have like a weird deck, you can manipulate the map and their cards into a more favorable situation for you. And then the third kind of defining character of control decks, I said card concepts, but this isn't really one. It's about a 3.0 to 4.0 average elixir cost. So they're not cycle decks, which can really screw you over if you make one micro mistake, and they're not beatdown decks, which can really screw you over if you make one macro mistake. These decks have a little bit of both, whereas if you make a macro mistake with cycle, it's really not going to be as bad because you have other, unless it's like, the big misplays. There are of course those misplays that will cost you, but like if you make a macro mistake with cycle, it's not really going to be the end of the world in most situations because you can easily correct whatever mistake you just made with like a quick cycle card, or sometimes like with an ice golem if you fail your skeletons. With a beatdown deck, you don't really have to worry about the micro mistakes as much, because if you misplace your Night Witch or something by a few tiles, it's not really going to be the end of the world, whereas it would be really bad if you misplaced something with a cycle deck. So those are going to be the characteristics of decks you want to use early on in a grand challenge. And so examples of good decks like this, RG Fisherman. It's still going to be good even after the nerfs, but it's got the Fisherman as your map control. Hunter is a pseudo splash card. It does so much pellet damage that you can kind of like say it's a splash card. And then you have the Fisherman as your map control, allowing you to manipulate the cards and let your win condition, the RG, go through kind of without having to worry about other units played on the RG because you can pull them off. So that's like that's how I would like start out the grand challenge. Things like I think I mentioned Barb Hut Graveyard, RG Fisherman, not really so much P.E.K.K.A. P.E.K.K.A.'s not the greatest for like a control deck, but stuff like that, splasher decks between 3.0 and 4.0 Elixir, those are going to be really good because they have the best control over the off meta decks. And I think that is the most important thing you want to be looking for. Oops, you want to be looking for when you are going into the grand challenge early. So after you've gotten out of that 4 to 5 to 6 wins area with that deck, you'll want to switch to a more to whatever deck you really want that's been meta. If you've seen that deck before, for a few months, so decks such as Graveyard, obviously, Royal Giant, P.E.K.K.A., 2.6, not really so much in grand challenges. Like the extremes don't really work as well in grand challenges, so high and low elixir cost. But decks that you can see on like API have been there for a lot or are really popular. Those are usually good ideas to invest your time into. So with those control decks that I was talking about earlier, you're not really going to need the most practice to use those at a high level early on, or a high enough level to win early on in the Grand Challenge. But with stuff like Cycle and Beatdown, you really need to have a higher knowledge of micro and macro skill, which can kind of screw you if you don't have it against those decks where if you make one mistake, they can surprise you. And yeah, so that's like my philosophy on that. And then for me, what I did as an early GC player was was really nervous about wasting my gems. So I had like a 70, I had almost my PB now when I started Grand Challenges. And that was kind of bad because like I was much I could have won a GC much earlier in my time. So I think definitely the 6 to 7k range is the good GC starting point, and you want to make sure you are really good with a deck. And that kind of brings me to the final thing, which is one tricking. And one tricking, in my opinion, is the fastest way to learn the game out there. And it's probably the most efficient way to learn the game as well, because if you're trying to be versatile, you have to learn every single card interaction and multiple different sets of card interactions, which can be really hard when you're not at actually like at a top level. And you also have to level up multiple different card sets, which can be horrible on a free to play player. So, one tricking free to play deck is really a good idea to learn the game because, again, not as much leveling, and you can learn that deck in much more nuanced ways. Because you see, when I play other decks, I'm nowhere as near confident with P.E.K.K.A. because I know pretty much not everything, but I know a lot more about P.E.K.K.A than I do the other decks, and that was how I was able to improve at the game much faster than if I had been trying other decks. So it's kind of like a short-term game where if you also one trick you could be you're not going to be as great in competitive modes, but against in grand challenges it's going to be perfectly fine if you want to get that first GC win. So I think one tricking definitely the way to go to start out with a grand challenge win, to start out getting your grand challenge win, and you're definitely going to want to play a more safe control deck in the earlier wins. And the last tip, I think I said last already, but the last big tip I want to get across is when you lose a grand challenge, sometimes when people on ladder will be like, you should stop, take a break after you lose like three. When you lose one in a grand challenge, it can get really, really, really tilting, but it's not the end of the world. Anybody can go really 12-0 as long as they have the skill to win. 12-1, 12-2, 12-0, they're all about the same as long as you can win the grand challenge. You shouldn't be intimidated by losses. So I'm trying to like say if you lose, take a break because that loss is not the end of the world. Even if it's at 0 wins, that loss is not the end of the world. You can still go in and win that grand challenge easily. So you want to take a break, make sure you're in the right mindset, and come back prepared for that next match. So I think I'll go into the conclusion now. I'm really bad at this format in videos, so it's probably awkward, more awkward than most people that when they try and like just talk about a topic. So my conclusion for this is you want to not attempt a GC if you're under a 6300 PB. You want to practice using ladder and classic challenges if you can. If you're between 6600 and 700, or 7000, I mean, and you have the gems to practice in GCs, because practicing in a GC is the best way to practice to win a GC, obviously. So if you can do that, then I would say practice that GC. You're ready to begin practicing. If not, ladder's also a good substitute because most players at that range have won a GC on their own. So, and then if you have a 7,000, 7,300 PB, classic challenges are not going to be the best way to go. You're going to want to try GCs, and you're going to want to use ladder as your main source of practice. When you're in the GC, for the first 5 or 6 wins, you want to use a control deck, something like again a splasher between 3 point lots of splashers between 3.0 and 4.0 elixir cost, and map control like the fisherman or the tornado. You'll want to find decks such as RG or graveyard. Those are by far the best control decks because they have a lot of splash and a lot of map control, and they're also between 3.0 and 4.0, I think. But that's my advice for starting off. And then you want to choose a deck to play that is really common among the top players, or it's been really common for a long time. So decks that are, consistent every meta. You see players that can do well with them, and they're not like obviously really bad in the meta like P.E.K.K.A. Players will still do well with this just because it's been in the game for so long, so many people have invested. So, and then yeah, so that's how you want to be one tricking or not one tricking. That's how you want to be using decks in a grand challenge. And then of course you want to be one tricking, basically only practicing with the deck that you want to win the grand challenge with. So hopefully this video helped you guys out with your first grand challenge wins or attempting them so that you know when and how you should try and get them. Hopefully my droning on wasn't too much of a problem to deal with. I think I'm gonna try and improve at being more concise with my thoughts instead of just like trying to or not trying to, instead of just like going all over the place wherever my head takes me. This skill I'll pick up as we keep doing this. But yeah, I will catch you guys in the next video. Hope you guys enjoyed again. Drop a like, subscribe if you enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.